was one of those calm mornings where everything seemed just right. The sky was pale blue, the cattle were grazing by the stream, and I had my mug of coffee watching the sunrise from my porch. My land, 20 acres of peace and quiet, was the one thing I'd worked my whole life for. But that peace didn't last long. When I rode out to check the south pasture, I saw something strange. A straight line of fresh wooden posts had appeared overnight, cutting right through my field like a scar. At first, I figured one of my ranch hands must have set them up for repairs, but then I got closer and froze. Brand new metal signs were zip-tied to the posts. Bold black letters read, "Private HOA property, no trespassing." For a second, I just stood there blinking. My land, my pasture, suddenly marked as someone else's private property? That didn't sit right. I followed the line of posts down for almost 50 yards, and the deeper I went, the worse it got. The fence wasn't just near the border, it cut straight into my ranch, taking a good 10 acres of it, including the patch with my irrigation pump and hay storage. And on the far side, beyond the new fence line, I could see the brand new development that had been going up across the road, a cookie-cutter neighborhood run by a homeowner association. I'd seen the construction for months, and to be honest, I'd kept out of their way, but apparently, they weren't planning to do the same. I decided to go over there and get some answers. By the time I pulled up to the HOA office trailer, a woman was standing outside in a bright pink cardigan and oversized sunglasses. Clipboard in hand, she looked exactly like what people imagine when they say, Karen. "Good morning," I said, trying to stay polite. "I think there's been a mistake. Someone from your development fenced off part of my land." She barely looked up. "Sir, this area is private HOA property. Please leave before I call security." I took off my hat and squinted at her. "Ma'am, I own that land. You can check the county records if you like." She scoffed. "Our developer had it surveyed. Everything is legally within our boundary. You're mistaken." At that point, I couldn't help but chuckle. "Surveyed, huh? Interesting. Because I'm the county surveyor who approved your project." Her head snapped up. For the first time, she looked uncertain. "You're... what?" "I'm the guy who drew your boundary maps," I said, holding up my phone and pulling up the official county overlay. "And according to this, you're about 40 feet over the property line." She immediately turned defensive. "There must be an error. Our developer assured us the new boundary was correct. We even had the paperwork signed." "Oh, I'm sure you did," I said with a grin. "Just not by the right person." She folded her arms and gave me that condescending smile you see from people who think they're always right. "Well, you can take it up with the HOA board, but we're not moving that fence. The county already approved the expansion." "Approved by who?" I asked. "By the planning department." I laughed. "I am the planning department when it comes to land surveys." Now she looked completely thrown off. "Then, why didn't you stop it?" "Because I didn't know you were dumb enough to build past the markers," I said. "We literally painted the border stakes bright orange. You had to step over them to get your fence there." Her cheeks flushed red. "You're being rude." "I'm being patient," I replied calmly. "I could have your whole development flagged for encroachment right now, but I'm giving you a chance to fix it before I make it official." Her voice went up a notch. "I'll have our legal team handle this. You'll be hearing from the HOA." I tipped my hat. "Can't wait." Then I turned my back and walked off, leaving her fuming in the dust. Back home, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. These HOA folks had fenced off part of a rancher's land, and not just any rancher. They'd fenced off land belonging to the county surveyor who literally approved their map. Still, I wasn't about to take it lightly. I dug into my files, pulled up the certified property plats, and saved a few satellite overlays for evidence. The plan was simple. Give them one more day to fix it. If they didn't, I'd let the county enforcement team handle it officially. Because if there's one thing I've learned in my job, it's that you don't mess with property lines. And Karen, she was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The next morning, I was halfway through my second cup of coffee when I saw a white SUV pull up near the fence line. On the side, in big fancy lettering, it said, Oak Ridge Estates HOA, official vehicle. Out stepped Karen again, with her signature sunglasses and a folder thick enough to choke a horse. But this time, she wasn't alone. With her were two men in hard hats and reflective vests, probably the HOA's so-called survey consultants. I could tell just from the way they looked at my property that they had no clue what they were doing. Karen strutted toward me like she owned the place. Mr. Whatever your name is, she said with a snippy tone. We're here to confirm that your claim is invalid. These professionals have verified our boundary. I leaned against my fence post, calm as ever. Is that so? Then I'd love to see their credentials. The older of the two men stepped forward. We're subcontracted by the developer, ma'am. Sir, he said nervously. We just followed the coordinates on the plan. I smiled faintly. The ones your developer gave you? Yes, sir. Not the ones from the county GIS database? He blinked. No, sir. Karen rolled her eyes. What does that even mean? A map is a map. Now I couldn't help it. I laughed out loud. Ma'am, that's like saying a recipe is a recipe, even if you swap salt for sugar. Her arms crossed tight. You're just trying to confuse us with your technical talk. The HOA board has already decided that this fence stays where it is. Oh, is that right? I said, stepping closer. Then I assume the HOA board is ready to pay $1,000 a day in fines for encroachment on county land. Her jaw dropped. What fines? Under Section 14 of the County Property Code, I said, pulling up my tablet. Any structure built past surveyed boundaries is subject to daily penalties until it's removed, and since you've got concrete posts, that's going to rack up pretty quick. She sputtered, clearly caught off guard. You can't just make up rules like that. I don't make them, ma'am, I said with a smirk. I enforce them. The two contractors looked increasingly nervous. One whispered something to Karen, and she spun around on him like a hawk. Don't you start taking his side. The poor guy just stared at his clipboard, pretending to take notes. I pulled out one of the orange stakes I'd brought from my truck and walked over to the ground near her fence. You see this? I said, pointing at the base. That's the original boundary marker. It's been in the ground for 6 years, painted, recorded, verified. She leaned over it, frowning. That doesn't prove anything. Ma'am, I said dryly, you literally built your fence on top of the marker. One of the contractors cleared his throat. He's right, ma'am. The marker aligns with the old coordinates. The HOA fence line extends at least 42 feet past. Karen's face turned red, and not from the sun. You're fired, she snapped at them. Both men exchanged a look, then shrugged. Fine by us, one said, packing up his gear. I tried not to grin, but I'll admit, it was satisfying to watch. Once they drove off, Karen turned her fury on me. You can't intimidate me. I'll have the county review your license for harassment. I chuckled. Be my guest. My office number's public record. You'll find it listed right under Chief Surveyor of County Planning. For a second, she looked like she'd seen a ghost. I continued calmly. Tell you what, ma'am. I'll give you 48 hours to remove that fence. After that, I'll file an official encroachment report. Once that happens, the county sends an inspector, and it'll go straight to the state property registrar. She tried to regain her composure. You wouldn't dare. I raised an eyebrow. Wouldn't I? 2 days later, the fence was still standing. No calls, no apology, no acknowledgement. So I did exactly what I said I'd do. I filed the report, submitted my photographs, coordinates, and documentation. Within hours, it was assigned to county enforcement for inspection. And since I was the surveyor on duty, guess who they sent to oversee the inspection? That's right. Me. When I showed up in the official county truck that Friday morning, Karen nearly tripped over herself running outside. What are you doing back here? Official inspection, I said, flashing my badge. You're on record now, just doing my job. Behind her, a few HOA members peeked out from their manicured lawns, whispering and taking photos. I paced along the fence line, taking measurements while reading aloud the coordinates from the county records. Boundary ends at marker 17B. HOA fence extends 41.6 feet into private property. Karen was losing it. You're making a mistake. Then you'll have your chance to explain it, I said, clicking my pen shut. At the county hearing next week. Her face went pale. What hearing? The one where the HOA will need to explain why it's occupying registered ranch land. I tipped my hat. See you there, ma'am. By the time I drove off, she was pacing in circles, barking orders at her neighbors to get the lawyer on the phone. I couldn't help but smile. She thought she could fence off my land and get away with it. But now, the fence was about to become the most expensive decoration in the entire HOA. And something told me she hadn't seen anything yet. By the time the county hearing rolled around, the whole Oak Ridge Estates community had heard about the fence incident. It had become local gossip. Half the neighborhood whispered that the HOA was in deep trouble, while the other half prayed Karen would somehow pull off another miracle to keep her reign of control intact. The meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the county administration building. I arrived early, dressed in a crisp County Surveyor uniform, clipboard in hand, every document ready. I didn't come to gloat. I came to end this properly. As I walked in, I spotted Karen sitting at the far end of the room, surrounded by 2 board members and a man in a cheap suit. Their lawyer, I guessed. Her usual smug confidence looked cracked. She was fidgeting, whispering frantically to the man beside her. When she noticed me walk in, her eyes widened. What is he doing here? The clerk at the front desk replied calmly, Mr. Walker is the county's assigned inspector and surveyor on this case. Karen looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Once the session started, the hearing officer, a no-nonsense woman named Ms. Ramirez, called us to the table. We're here today to address the encroachment complaint filed by County Surveyor Ben Walker regarding unauthorized construction on private land by the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. Karen immediately cut in. This whole thing is a misunderstanding. We didn't build anything. We simply re-established boundaries that were unclear. Ms. Ramirez raised an eyebrow. According to the complaint, you installed a metal fence 41 feet past your HOA boundary. Is that correct? Karen turned to her lawyer, who cleared his throat nervously. Well, we believe the existing coordinates were ambiguous, and the HOA acted in good faith. That was my cue. I stood, placed my binder on the desk, and opened it to a detailed map with GPS data, survey scans, and time-stamped images. For the record, I said, these coordinates are from the official county database, verified in 2017. The HOA fence extends precisely 41.6 feet past that point, directly onto my registered ranch property. I slid a photo across the table. Here's the boundary marker. Painted, tagged, recorded. You'll notice the HOA post is bolted through it. Karen let out an exasperated sigh. Oh, come on! No one even knew that marker was there. Ms. Ramirez leaned forward. So you didn't hire a county-certified surveyor before construction? Karen hesitated. We used a consultant. Her lawyer shifted in his seat. They were independent. I smirked. Independent is one way to say unlicensed. A few chuckles broke out from the back of the room where other property owners had gathered to watch. I continued. Not only did the HOA fail to verify their plans, but they also ignored a formal notice of encroachment I sent. Twice. Instead, Mrs. Green, I gestured toward Karen, chose to confront me personally and threaten legal action. Karen slammed her hands on the table. You provoked me. You were waving your authority around like a weapon. Ms. Ramirez tapped her pen against her notepad. Mrs. Green, please keep your composure. We're reviewing facts here. The tension was thick. Even Karen's lawyer was sweating bullets. Then Ms. Ramirez looked at me. Mr. Walker, just to clarify, your position with the county is... I nodded. Lead surveyor for county zoning and development, ma'am. I've approved every land plan in this district for the past 8 years. Karen froze. Wait, You approved our HOA development? I smiled. That's right. I signed off on it, which means I also approved the official property lines you're now violating. A murmur spread through the room. One of the HOA board members muttered, "Oh my God," under his breath. Ms. Ramirez turned to the HOA's lawyer. Given the evidence, the county finds Oak Ridge Estates HOA guilty of unauthorized construction and property encroachment. Karen looked like she'd been struck by lightning. Ms. Ramirez continued, "You are hereby ordered to remove the fence within 7 days and restore the property boundary at your expense. Additionally, the county will issue a fine of $1,000 per day until full compliance is verified." Karen shot to her feet. "This is outrageous! You can't fine me! I'm not even—" Ms. Ramirez interrupted. "The HOA is responsible. As its president, the penalty notice will be issued in your name." Dead silence. Her lawyer tried to whisper something, but she waved him off, her face beet red. As the hearing adjourned, Karen turned toward me, fury in her eyes. "You think you've won? You'll regret humiliating me like this." I picked up my binder, calm as ever. "Ma'am, I didn't humiliate you. You did that all by yourself." She stomped out of the room, muttering something about calling the mayor, which made one of the board members snort. When she was gone, Ms. Ramirez leaned over to me and whispered, "Ben, I've seen some wild HOA disputes, but that one's going in my book." I chuckled. Something tells me she's not done yet. And sure enough, by the end of that week, Karen was already plotting her next move, and it involved something even more ridiculous than the fence. But this time, she wasn't just crossing a line on a map. She was about to cross a legal one. The HOA fence was gone within 6 days. Contractors worked day and night, sweating under Karen's barking orders. Every time I passed by on my morning walks, I'd see her standing in the driveway, arms crossed, glaring at the workers as if sheer anger could bend the fence back into existence. But what she didn't know was the fence wasn't the end of her problems. When the county issued its fines, the HOA's insurance refused to cover them. Why? Because the construction had been done without proper authorization. That meant the responsibility, both legal and financial, fell squarely on the shoulders of the HOA president. And that president was none other than Karen Green. The audit. A week later, I got a call from my colleague Lisa from the county compliance department. "Ben, you might want to grab some popcorn," she said, laughing. "We've just opened a financial audit on the Oak Ridge Estates HOA. Seems their board's been creative with the budget." I wasn't surprised. Karen always treated HOA fees like her personal piggy bank. Fancy decorations, private gardeners, catered meetings. But now, with the audit, everything was about to unravel. That afternoon, I watched from my porch as a county vehicle rolled up to Karen's driveway. 2 officials stepped out with clipboards. Karen came rushing outside, trying her usual charm, the tight smile, the fake laugh. But when they flashed their badges, her face drained of color. "Mrs. Green," one of them said, "we're here to review HOA financial records for the past 2 years. Her response? "You can't just show up like this. I'm a homeowner. I have rights." "Yes, ma'am," the inspector replied calmly. "And we have a warrant." Karen's voice cracked. "A warrant!" I sipped my coffee and pretended to check my phone, but inside I was grinning. The domino effect. Within 48 hours, chaos erupted inside the HOA board. 3 members resigned, 2 demanded public reimbursement, and the treasurer, an older man named Bill, sent an anonymous email to the county with scanned copies of questionable expenses that Karen had personally approved. Expenses like $2,300 for decorative garden lighting for her yard, $100 for community refreshments, actually her wine subscription, and $700 for security consulting, which turned out to be a dog trainer for her Pomeranian. The county forwarded everything to the sheriff's office for review. Karen must have known she was cornered, because that weekend she started calling everyone in the neighborhood trying to spin the story. "It's a misunderstanding," she told one homeowner. "The county's overreacting. Ben Walker's behind this. He's had it out for me since day one." Except, no one believed her anymore. Not after she dragged the whole community into her power trip. By Monday, the HOA held an emergency meeting. Dozens of homeowners packed the community center. The air was thick with tension and anger. I attended too, as a property owner. When Karen walked in, the room went silent. The meeting. "I've called this meeting," Karen began, forcing a smile, "to clarify the lies being spread about me and our HOA. From the back, someone shouted, "Then clarify the missing 15,000! Murmurs exploded. Karen tried to regain control. "All expenses were approved by the board." Bill, the treasurer, stood up, holding a folder. "No, they weren't. These were falsified signatures. You forged mine, Karen." The crowd gasped. Her smile twitched. "That's ridiculous." He threw the copies on the table. "Tell that to the county auditor. They already have the originals." Karen's face went pale. She looked around, desperate for support, but no one spoke, not one person. Finally, the vice president stood up. "Effective immediately, the HOA board votes to remove Karen Green as president." The room erupted in applause. Karen shouted, "You can't do this! I built this community!" Someone yelled back, "You built fences on other people's land!" That broke the room into laughter. Karen stormed out, muttering threats under her breath. The knock at her door. 2 days later, I was in my barn when I heard sirens down the road. I walked outside just in time to see a sheriff's car pull into Karen's driveway. 3 officers stepped out. One of them was my wife, Sheriff Dana Walker. Karen burst out the front door in her pink robe, waving papers. "This is harassment. You can't come here without cause." Dana calmly handed her a document. "Ma'am, you're being charged with misappropriation of HOA funds and document forgery. You'll need to come with us." Karen's jaw dropped. You can't arrest me. I run this neighborhood." Dana smirked. "Not anymore." As they escorted her to the car, Karen spotted me across the street. Her glare could have melted steel. "You did this, Ben. You'll pay for this." I just tipped my hat. "Just doing my job, ma'am." The car drove off. The flashing lights reflected off the empty space where her fence used to be. The irony wasn't lost on me. Epilogue. 3 months later, Oak Ridge Estates was a different place. The new HOA president was reasonable, the meetings were civil, and no one cared what color your mailbox was anymore. Karen, meanwhile, took a plea deal: probation, fines, and permanent removal from the HOA board. She sold her house quietly and moved out of the county. Sometimes I still see that empty lot where her fence once stood, a reminder that arrogance has boundaries, too. And as for me? Well, let's just say I got a nice thank you card from half the neighborhood, and a free bottle of wine from Bill. Guess karma finally surveyed its own boundaries.